On the Security Weekly News, I try to scan and produce a quick look at some of the major stories to help you keep up with what's going on in and around the industry in a short format. Myself, Aaron Layla, and Josh Marpet, and other guest commentators provide greater insight every week. I'm Doug White, and I hope that you'll look for the Security Weekly News in all of your favorite podcast catchers and subscribe for the latest content.
Hi, I'm Paul Wagenseal. I'm a custom content strategist with Cyber Risk Alliance, and I'm here with Chris Simmons, who's a VP of Marketing and Strategy. I'm sorry I messed that up. at Savvy. VP of Strategy at Savvy. And our topic is called, is your SSO on point, or is it more like single sign, oh no? So Chris, tell me a little bit about Savvy.
Thanks. So Savvy is an identity-first SaaS security company. Our solution is designed with, the reality that identities are essentially the front door to any SaaS app. And so, considering that identity and SaaS security are inseparable, we focus on finding and fixing the gaps in a company's existing IAM infrastructure and look for blind spots and ensure efficacy. And so how we do that is, through a combination of discovery techniques, but, people have invested in SSO, IDPs, IGA, PAM, all of the technologies, and yet they're still suffering with account-related takeovers, with breaches that can be traced back to compromised credentials and things like that. And so with SaaS, it's never more apparent that there is a need to really have really strong identity security.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. So how do you fill those gaps? How do you solve those problems?
Yeah. So the way that Savvy does it is we first do discovery, because again, visibility is probably one of the hardest challenges that companies face, is really just knowing what do I have and who has access to it. Some very basic questions that are really difficult to answer whenever it comes to SaaS world. 53% of most SaaS apps today are adopted and put into use without involving the IT department at all anymore. So getting that visibility is really hard. Yeah. And so how we do it is we deploy on the IDP, we deploy on the email server, as well as in the browser. And by looking at the different layers of that, we're able to discover what is supposed to happen and what is actually happening. Right? And so we can discover things like when an application has been onboarded to SSO and you think, okay, job's done. Everybody's using SSO, right? Not quite. Yeah. Right. The actual utilization is far lower, is what we have found. And so by being in the browser, we can compare against what's supposed to be the policy in the IDP and then report on where those gaps are. And that's whenever I say we identify IAM gaps, that's how we do it.
Yeah. So you do it in the browser, right? That makes sense. And it's interesting. You're bringing up all this. I wouldn't call it, maybe you can call it shadow SaaS. People, installing things, implementing things without really telling the IT department.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. We used to call it shadow IT, shadow SaaS, and now it's commonly just being called business-led IT, because that's the way it's happening, right? It's the reality. Yeah. This democratized IT model is well underway.
Right.
Adopting SaaS was the first step, and then when we went through the pandemic, people kind of hit the gas really hard on this decentralized model.
Of course.
And now we see CIOs, CISOs federating their responsibilities with the business leaders in the organization. Yeah. And so this gives them a model of being able to do that, but still have some visibility and governance over the ecosystem.
That's interesting. I mean, so this is you're actually kind of fulfilling a need that many people may not be aware they have.
Absolutely. Yeah. The biggest challenge that we have is people have a very high false sense of security. They just believe my users would never do that. Like, for example, we have this was discovered during a merger and acquisition due diligence period where we were deployed, and we found that one account had been using a AI note taker. They had connected it with with an identity that they created,
Sure.
but then shared that same password was also their Facebook password, their Gmail password, and several other personal accounts. And not only that, it had been compromised.
Yeah.
And so, and this was, unmanaged app, shared, compromised. And whenever we see things like that, separately, they're not that big of a deal. They're a big deal, but you have to prioritize.
Right.
But we call those toxic risks whenever you see the combination of shared, reused, compromised credentials, and then with a very highly sensitive app, especially during mergers and acquisitions, an AI note taker. What could happen?
Yeah, I mean that makes sense. I mean it's you may have a bunch of small things that don't look dangerous isolated, but when you chain them together, then you just create a huge risk.
Absolutely.
That's really interesting.
And businesses today are just really blind to this. They're not able to really get a good grip on the visibility of what's happening outside the known. Yeah. Companies have done such a great job with implementing single sign-on for their core applications, but like the AI note taker is a great example, or something like a Notion or a project management tool like Asana. People use those apps without telling the IT department.
And it sounds great, but I mean, the AI note taker is a great example because, I mean, someone I work with suddenly started putting this in all our meetings, and it sounds great, but then you realize that is a machine identity. That is a person in the chat, and that machine identity has its own identity and must be managed as well.
Yeah, and we commonly see that people use their own personal identities to connect and link apps. Like take a Salesforce linking to any number of helper apps like that may be used. You actually use your own personal identity to make that connection. And so we discover that we call those app-to-app identities as well.
Yeah. That makes sense. I mean, you want to get something done, you use a lousy password. I'm going to go change it, make a better password later. You never do.
Right.
That kind of thing.
Yeah, absolutely. And, like whenever people have they onboard an app into their central management system, how often do they go back and remove all access to direct logins? And so what we're able to show, is we're saying, okay, 43% of this app that you thought you had onboarded to your SSO, people are still logging in directly because that's the way they've always done it. And they were never really instructed to do anything different. And then you have things like break glass accounts and other legitimate reasons. And so one of the great things about Savvy is that we can interact with the user inside the browser and say, hey, what are you doing? Why are you doing it? Is this personal? Are you are you trying to do you know that this account has been onboarded to our SSO? Can I take you there and log in this way instead? And so we can kind of enforce or encourage good identity hygiene behaviors.
Okay. Now, how would you get everyone to jump on board SSO? How would you force them to change their ways?
So whenever we detect a login page, we're actually able to frost over the page and block it, and so that they can't log in with that. And so we don't need to configure the app in any way because we can just simply block the login.
Okay, that's great.
And redirect them to the single sign-on.
Okay. So what leads to a false sense of security when people are using SSO?
Yeah, it's really like I mentioned earlier, they think, oh, I've onboarded this, my job's done. Like we talked to a number of people in the IAM space and we say, how do you validate that this is what's actually happening? How sure are you that your SSO is working the way that you intended? And until you ask them, a lot of times people just haven't really thought about it, or they've thought about it but just didn't realize that there's a way that they could solve the issue and actually put some checks and balances in place.
I think it's also because most people will, they want to turn it on and forget, set it and forget it.
Absolutely. Everybody wants the easy button, and this is really a way of eliminating a lot of the manual labor of, like, you get something like the mother of all breaches that happened, was it late last year? And, you do a search and find all these accounts that you may have been involved with, or your user base may have been involved with, right? And said, instead of calling all those up and walking them through a process, you can just build an automation playbook to say, hey, we need you to reset this password, and we're going to walk you through that process in the browser.
Okay, that sounds like a good way to handle it.
So it saves time.
So we've gone over this a bit, but why is good identity hygiene? Why is it really, really crucial for SaaS security?
Yeah, and identity, as I mentioned earlier, it's the front door to every SaaS app, and it is, it's not the only thing about good SaaS security, but it's the fundamental thing that you need to get right. And unfortunately, we see really bad identity hygiene. And when there's so many notable breaches. I don't want to call anyone out here today, but everyone knows that there's been some really high profile breaches recently where account takeover, compromised credentials, all of these things that were preventable. There was a recent government breach where the person used they had admin level privileges on a remote access server, and they were able to then the account was compromised, no MFA enabled. Again, we see that as a toxic combination of risk. That's something you should not let linger. But without the tools to really get visibility to it and then do something about it, it's a tough problem.
I think if someone's been in the position for more than 5 years, it's a pretty safe bet there's no MFA enabled.
Right.
That's something you really have to go back and investigate in a way. Do you have tools that could do that could find out whether or not, Joe Admin, who's been on the job since 2015, does he have MFA enabled on his account or not?
Exactly. Yeah. So we're able to validate whether the MFA is enabled, and then we can provide ongoing and continuous monitoring to make sure it stays enabled, because some apps you could flip it on and off, right? You can, some apps you can lock it so that it has to be used, where other apps you may be able to bypass it. And there's a number of reasons why, you might not want to only rely on your single sign-on and the MFA that it provides, because, maybe it's really expensive and you don't want to pay the SSO tax. And so you choose not to onboard that app into your central identity management solution. And so this is a way that you can still provide that assurance that that hygiene is up to standard for what your policy dictates.
Well, we hear a lot about the SSO tax. I mean, how bad is it really? I mean, you're paying for a service. There's obviously a benefit for it. Why is there resistance to that, to sort of, paying for SSO?
Yeah, I think it comes down to the criticality of the app. And we see it a lot more with this business-led IT that I've mentioned.
Sure.
Where the person doesn't want to break out a credit card, so they just use the freemium version. And, we used to find rogue SaaS usage by auditing the books. What kind of
who paid for what?
What kind of expenses are being submitted for software subscriptions, right? But with a lot of freemium apps, there is no such transaction like that, and you can almost guarantee that if it's a freemium version, it doesn't have the SSO enabled, and so.
Okay, so what can organizations do to gain checks and balances for their SSO strategy?
Yeah, like I mentioned, using tools like Savvy, you really need to be able to understand and gain visibility into the entire SaaS footprint, like not just what you've centrally managed. We typically discover 4 times as many SaaS apps in use, active use, than what a company has in their SSO.
Wow.
And so it's a pretty staggering number. And then you have all kind of additional issues like offboarding is the one we haven't talked about yet.
Sure.
Movers, joiners, leavers. How do you keep up with all of that? And how do you ensure that whenever someone leaves the organization for an unmanaged SaaS app, that you've removed their identity or you've disabled access to their identity, right? And so offboarding is another really great use case for Savvy, where we're able to we passively discover who the app admin is. So whenever it comes time to offboard, you know who to ask. That's one of the biggest challenges, is knowing who to ask. And so offboarding, we can just automate that whole process and make it much more painless, and allow people to have a much higher degree of overall identity security without so much effort, without the manual effort, because without a tool like Savvy, you look at the problem and you go, this is too much. Like it's like a big tidal wave, or avalanche, coming at you.
Yeah.
The number of apps, there are just too many to be effective at, and it's only growing. I think, we saw the average number of apps inside an organization trend down a little bit from last year, because companies are finally starting to try to get their hands around the SaaS sprawl problem and reduce the number of apps that are in use at the organization.
They're pruning a little bit.
Yes.
But that's I really think that's only going to be temporary, isn't it? I mean,
yeah. Well, we had one customer who was trying to migrate off of a project management tool, and they were trying to migrate users that they had been working on the project to go from this tool to that tool. It was taking them 9 months to do this. And as soon as they would move one group of people, some more people would sign up. So it's like this game of whack-a-mole. And so what we were able to do was, by being present there in the browser, is just stop people from signing up and say, hey, this is actually the app that you should be using. Can you just comply with the policy and use this one instead? And we were able to move everybody over in 2 weeks.
Was there any resistance to that when you did that? Really? Yeah. Okay. That's great.
So,
yeah. All right. I believe we are out of time, if that's correct. I think we are. So once again, we've been talking to Chris Simmons, who's a VP of Strategy at Savvy. And please, you can go back and watch this interview at securityweekly.com/SavvyIDV. That's SAVVYIDV. I'm Paul Wagenseal for Cyber Risk Alliance. Hello, I'm Paul Wagenseal. I'm a custom content strategist with Cyber Risk Alliance, and I'm here at Identiverse with Vibhuti Sinha, who is the Chief Product Officer at Savient, which is a major identity company, and we're going to be talking about the future of identity management, transitioning from operational to intelligent platforms. Now, Vibhuti, how do you quantify the difference between an operational and an intelligent platform?
A good question, Paul. If you look at identity projects predominantly, they have been in an operations phase for a very long time. People used to work with Excel sheets, people used to work with macros. It has evolved, and there were a number of products which got created in this space. But what has happened is that it has just taken the human element at a certain degree and it never went away from making it into a completely intelligent platform, because the sheer volume with which identity events and types are increasing.
Sure.
Now is the time for these platforms to become, and the transformation projects which the enterprises are doing in this space, to take the leap and go from an operational to an intelligent platform.
But what is the fundamental difference? What is operational versus intelligent? What does that really mean?
So in a typical governance workflow, what you see is people certifying access, people requesting access. It was okay when you had a small subset of identities being requested for. But when the volumes are in millions, when the volumes are in, and the events are occurring in real time, it's humanly not possible to mine that information. And a lot of that information and a lot of that deduction is being done manually today with these tools. And that is why the intelligence equation comes in, wherein it allows you to focus with what matters. And that focus on what really matters is where the intelligence comes in. So out of 5 million entitlements or 0.5 million entitlement which you have to certify, if you have to look for the 1,000 ones, that's what an operational to an intelligent platform does, that it lets you focus on that exact subset of scope, what really matters, number one. And number two, it also allows the decision makers, people who approve access, people who get into the system to make some decisions, they get the right amount of information at the right amount of time. What happens is that in traditional identity platforms, a lot of time is being spent on people understanding what does this really mean. You talk to another human being, that human being is talking to another human being. They're trying to figure out what's really going on. Rather than the platform doing that heavy lifting and telling you intelligently what those decisions should be, giving you the right ammunition for you to make the right amount of decisions at the right amount of time with the right amount of information. So that's a fundamental shift
Mhm.
from an operational to an intelligent platform.
So, I mean, are you saying there's a lot more automation in an intelligent platform? That you know,
Automation is one piece to it,
Mhm.
but it's also about taking a very large sets of data,
Mhm.
and then telling you what exactly is the data which you should be looking at.
Mhm. Mhm.
Point number one. Point number two, if you look at identity platforms
Mhm.
and identity data, the data itself is very poor.
Mhm.
Why do you have a certification campaign or an access campaign which is taking months? Because you do not have enough descriptions for your entitlements.
Right.
You do not have the right owners who should be certifying that access, or your requesters are struggling because they don't know what an entitlement really means. So all this information, all this poor data quality also adds, it exacerbates the whole efficiency of the platform, and that's what intelligence brings in, which allows you to not only enrich that data, but it also allows you to focus on what really matters. So it's not just automation, but it's also improving the quality of the data and then giving you at the right point of time when it is really needed.
So it's guiding and filtering and sort of pointing in the right direction.
Guiding and filtering would be the starting point, but also with all the advancements we have in the AI technologies, a lot of that is generated by the large language models and technologies like Gen AI. So you, as a person, you do not have to understand the identity lingo to get the best out of an identity
Right.
platform. You tell what you want in pure, simple English terms.
I see.
Like, I want to do this job. Let the system figure out what it means
Okay.
underlying.
So it's giving you a bit of a distance from the technical workings, but it's making it easier for someone who's not well versed in the sort of lingo to operate it.
Exactly.
Okay.
Exactly.
Okay. That's interesting. All right. So, what do you see as a major shift in identity security beyond what you've just described?
So there are three major shifts happening right now in the identity industry. Number one, due to the macroeconomic conditions, there is a massive pressure on every identity leader to do more in a cheaper, faster, and better manner.
Of course.
In fact, the number what the most of the enterprises are targeting for, and even the analyst reports says that 50% is the number which every enterprise is looking to cut down on their operational costs for their identity projects. If you look at it, 50% is a very lofty number. It's not a small number. And that's why our investments in intelligence is much needed in this space. The second big shift, as I explained to you earlier, is to consume identity platforms, you need to understand the lingo, you need to understand the technical plumbing, and all that has to go away with abstraction, all that has to go away with simplicity. So at this point of time, globally, 60% of the organizations, they are now looking to simplify their identity platform operations, the entire experience of how you interact with a complex ecosystem like that. The third big shift, what we are seeing is cloud has grown. The adoption of cloud has picked up massively. But even today, security and compliance of cloud is the number one hindrance in the adoption of cloud. In fact, 59% of the organizations have kept security and compliance as the number one barrier for them to go to cloud. And that is why having identity platforms secure your cloud assets, again, is a massive shift, what we are seeing in this ecosystem. Another interesting fact, what we saw is that 47 to 48% of the budgets have been allocated just for the security and compliance aspects, or to improve the security posture of your cloud ecosystem. And with identity being the new perimeter, it sits right and center with respect to your cloud first strategy.
So that's a pretty big goal. If companies really want to cut their identity spending in half, just as identity is becoming more and more important, it seems like these are two impossible sort of things to reconcile, and how to save you and try to like bridge that gap.
So I'll start with the first one, which is how are we thinking about reducing the 50%. So the first thing what we did was we built what we are calling it as the next gen recommendations engine. So you come as a user to our platform, and if let's say you want to request access, it sounds very trivial. It's not in most of the enterprises, because there's so much business logic entangled, and users are spending an awful lot of time to figure out how should I get access to, let's say, Salesforce as an application, or any other SaaS application, or business critical applications like SAPs of the world. So what we are doing is we are collecting a lot of that information, and we are giving you recommendations on based on what your peers have access to. Do they have same job code? Do they have same location in which they are based out of? So the system creates all these intelligent recommendations and tells you that this is what you should be requesting access to, rather than they coming and hunting down for that.
Right.
On an average, if you look at it, 220,000 roles are the average number of entities which a user has to search for to get the right access.
Wow.
Why? So the idea is that why not tell them exactly what they need and let the system do the heavy lifting, number one. Number two, what we are doing is building that human interaction. You tell me what you want to do. If you want to patch a production server, or if you want to, let's say, download a particular financial report for your quarterly updates on for your financial updates, you tell us what you want to do and let the system figure out what access do you need, whether it is for 5 systems, 7 systems. You don't have to search for that. And that's where we are building a Gen AI based natural language interface, whereas a person doesn't have to understand the lingo.
Right.
And again, this is again powered through all the advancements we have in the Gen AI technologies. And the third one, which is the most interesting one, is giving you the right insights and analytics. If you look at all the products in the market, what they give you is what we call in the analytics world is a descriptive analytics, which tells you that these are the 7 things or 7,000 things which has happened. What they don't tell you is why has it happened, will it happen again, and what can I do to prevent it from happening. And these are the 3 stages of analytics, which is going from descriptive to diagnostic, prescriptive, and predictive analytics. And that's what we are doing. We are building industry's first identity security data lake, which will again amass massive amounts of identity information, mine all that using AI technologies, and then give you those intelligent insights, which tells you, yes, your request times are pretty long, or your certification times are skewed up, but this is what you can do to prevent it from happening.
Terrific. Now, how is Savient ready for the identity shifts, and how is it helping organizations with their transformations from operational to intelligence security?
Yeah, we have been in this journey for the last several years now. I think we have made massive strides, as I mentioned. Our recommendations engine is being adopted really well. There is so much more to learn from our customers and partners, where they are feeding their information to our engines, and it is learning, it is evolving. So all the intelligence which we have built in the platform, it is evolving, number one. Number two is the simplicity. So we have taken massive strides in also improving the simplicity or the experience of the platform. So the whole natural language interaction with the platform, that is picking up. That is where we are putting a lot of our money and time on. But we are also doing tremendous amounts of usability testing with our existing customers as well as with our partners on how we should be shaping the identity platform for the next 5 to 10 years. And in lieu of that, we created what we call it as the next gen identity marketplace. So our partners are building their solutions. Our customers are helping us to crowdsource a lot of what they are seeing in this ecosystem. And overall, not only they are helping Savient, but they are helping the community to grow together, because all the intelligence which they are sharing, it is helping not only their peers, but also any and every customer who is trying to get and resolve their identity transformation needs. And the third thing, as I mentioned, was the cloud security aspect. So with cloud security, with our deep partnerships with players like AWS and Microsoft, we have been investing a lot in ensuring that all the latest and greatest technologies, what these providers or the hyperscalers are doing, we ingrain ourselves with them. So not only our customers are going to AWS and Microsoft as part of their cloud adoption, but Savient is becoming the front and center in ensuring that when they migrate or when they adopt AWS and Microsoft, they are doing that in a secure and they are governed. Like governance doesn't become an afterthought; it is embedded right from in their business workflows on day one.
Okay, that's interesting. So how do you work with these partners? Do you all share information? Is that how it works?
Can you repeat that?
Well, I mean, with it, you mentioned AWS and Microsoft as your partners, and you are testing out different interfaces, different strategies to improve the situation. Are AWS and Microsoft participating in that, or are you just sharing information with?
Yes, absolutely. So Microsoft recently released their security copilot as part of their GenAI effort.
Right.
And one of the things which they came to us was when they were launching the security copilot for the SOC analysts, they wanted the identity context to be provided.
Right.
And we partnered very early on where Savient is now fully integrated with the security copilot of Microsoft.
Oh, great.
Any customer who has invested in Microsoft offerings can now ensure that the Microsoft and Savient offerings goes hand in hand, and their SOC analyst not only has a threat data coming from Microsoft, but they also are amped up with the identity context which is coming in from Savient.
Okay.
So we have been partnering with these players since our early days. It has been a good partnership with them. The other dimension to this is the SI partners. So the big fours, all the SI partners who work with our customers, they also provide a tremendous value add. They understand the proprietary information of our customers. They understand the entire ecosystem. They understand the verticals. So they are already building a lot of solutions. They're crowdsourcing a lot of that and putting it onto our marketplace.
Okay.
Some of it is transactable, some of it is free to the community. So overall, it's helping our partners to build on top of the foundational platform what we have, and then helping to elevate the identity security posture for our customers.
Terrific. I think we're out of time, I'm afraid. So I'm Paul Wagensill. We've been here with Vibhuti Sinha, the Chief Product Officer of Savient, and you can watch this interview later at securityweekly.com/Savient IDV, spelled SAVIYNTIDV. And I'm Paul Wagensill, Cyber Risk Alliance. Thank you.
Thank you, Paul.
Thank you.
Good chatting with you.
Appreciate it.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Bill Brenner, Head of Content at Cyber Risk Alliance, which includes SC Media and our Security Weekly family of podcasts. And I am joined by Tarvinder Sembi. Welcome. And Tarvinder is Vice President of Identity Solutions at IDI. And we are going to talk about KYB, increasing KYB coverage through linking consumer and business data. And so welcome, first off.
Glad to be here. Thank you.
So I'm wondering if we could start by, just for the benefit of the audience, talk through what KYB is.
Yeah. So KYB just means know your business.
Yep.
Right. And the analogy is KYC with know your customer. And it's just the ability to know that the applicant that you're trying to enroll remotely is the business that they're claiming to be. So you're verifying that business. So whether you want to put that business in your marketplace, if you're a marketplace platform, or whether you're a loan underwriter that's looking to approve a loan for this business, you need to verify that business exists. And also, if you extend it, know the beneficial owners exist as well, and there's no fraud that's behind those business or the beneficial owners.
So talk about why there's been this increased need for know your business.
Yeah, so there's several trends in the industry that's been happening and just in the world that have been happening over the last several years, 10 years. And that one is obviously the increased digitization, right? A lot more transactions are happening online, remotely. There's marketplace platforms that small businesses, sole proprietors can really place their goods and services on those platforms. There's also increased financial services that are going to those types of players and even contractors have loans that they can apply for, finish their contract, and pay them back. And so there's a lot more activity and financial services and economic activity happening remotely. So that's one. Two is there is globalization as well. So there's, and we also work with several companies that are saying, hey, we're a European-based company, but we've got American businesses that are coming into our platform, so we need to know who they are. And so they need that expertise to do that verification. And third is because those increased demand for remote KYB activities, there's a lot of fraud that's entered into this into this business space. And it also got, I would say, exacerbated with the PPP protection program that got rolled out very fast. And rightfully so, they needed to get money to these businesses that were struggling, but that also created a fraud vector. And so there's an increased amount of fraud that's happening where people are pretending to have a business and they go in, have goods or contract, or, hey, I want to open a dentist office, get the loan, and it never gets paid back because that business wasn't legitimate. Right. So those trends, it's really the increased demand for remote transactions really creates a demand for it. And that increase in demand also created a fraud vector. And so there's a big need in the industry today to have very effective KYB solutions.
And talk about the level of difficulty of implementing KYB solutions.
Yeah, and it's really, I would say, a capability that's just in its infancy in terms of creating the coverage that you need to do effective KYB. And part of the reason is in the US, you've got 50 secretaries of states, and each one has different policies connecting them. It's probably not normalized. Some of them don't update. So there may be businesses that are not active that are still showing active in the business, and they may not update regularly. And sometimes if it's a sole proprietor, they may not incorporate it into those systems. And so as you bring in that data, there's a lot of, I would say, noise, missing, unclean data as you kind of try to consolidate that and provide a effective KYB solution. So that's one thing. So the other thing is just linking beneficial owners, officers, to those businesses and saying, okay, are these, this business may be real, but is this person, is it a synthetic ID? Has there been criminal history in the past? And so you really have this disparate systems out there. There's a business verification and a KYC type of verification, and the ability to link those two is really critical as well. So those validation technologies, I think, are still, the market is maturing on that.
So talk to me now about what, in your view, and this, of course, is the focus on what IDI is here for.
Right.
What the pieces are to a good know your business solution.
Right. And a good know your business solution is not unlike a good KYC solution, right? It needs to be multi-source data that comes in, so you're not relying on one source. You need a good entity resolution engine that can bring in these disparate sources and take the noise out, create the linkages. But what really will set it apart is somebody who can then link it to consumer data that then can do that same sort of KYC on the beneficial owners and the beneficial or officers or executives of this business, and then you can look at fraud history, criminal history, synthetic ID fraud on not just the business but the beneficial owners. So the first thing is really a strong entity resolution engine that brings in multi-sources, links it with consumers, and really provides you the best coverage, and also provides you the fraud, not only on the business side but on the beneficial owner side. So that's number one. So number two is that you need it in an infrastructure that's cloud-based, very reliable, very fast, with very easy, flexible APIs that you can integrate it into your workflows. And what we believe at IDI is really having single APIs that can do multiple workflows, so you can have one integration and address majority of your identity needs or KYB needs for that business. And finally, you want to be able to really evaluate the performance and how well the coverage is very easy. And so you need to have somebody working with you that makes that process easy, makes that evaluation easy, makes it without a lot of hurdles, and then really a partner with you to build the most optimal solution for your needs and your workflows and your consumer experience as well.
Very good. So since we are talking from Identiverse, what are some of your impressions? I'm not sure if you were able to see any of the keynotes yesterday or if you've had a chance yet to walk the floor, but any big trend impressions when it comes to the direction that identity security is taking?
Yeah, so I think identity and security, there are a lot of trends that we're seeing, right? So one of the what we've seen, and I think IDI has been ahead of the curve, where there is that need for that KYB solution that is integrated with consumer and business, right? But on the consumer side, we see a lot of convergence in terms of needing security, but also consumer experience, right? So you need to, and we see that on the KYB front too, is you want to make it easy for your customers, right? Because abandonment rates are real, right? If you make it hard, right? So you may improve your fraud vector, but you really impact your business negatively if you don't have an efficient technology in place. So that consumer experience has to tie well with the security application or workflow that you're putting in. So that's one. And then the other vector that's coming in is the privacy vector. So you need to make sure that you are protecting privacy and the data you use, the KYC processes that you use, the identity that you are managing, it all is very privacy centric, and you've got the ability and the rights for that data that you use. So privacy is a big trend that we see just continuing to highlight and grow as well. And we see a lot of technology companies out here as well doing that.
Very good. And you have a booth here?
Yes, we do.
And so to those of you who are here at Identiverse, please do check out the IDI booth. And also, to keep along with all of our coverage coming from Identiverse, you can visit securityweekly.com/IDI IDV. And you can see all of our articles, videos, and follow along. Tarvinder, it's been a pleasure.
Thank you for having me.
And I look forward to seeing what IDI does from here.
All right, excellent. I'm glad to be here. Appreciate you having me.
And we'll be back.